Well, applaud for me? All right. Okay, we got 3 teachers over here. We'll see if they can beat that later on, okay? Because I'm not one of the teachers. So anyway, I'm Steve Mcllvain, like he said, and I'll be facilitating our time. That means I sort of make sure these guys stay on track. And as in general, we start on time, and once in a great while tomorrow you get a break, and blah blah blah. And so that's kind of what my job is. And I want to thank Dr. Brogy for inviting us to come. We're all from the Kansas City area on the Kansas side. We got one Lawrence KU family here, but the rest of us are in Kansas City proper, only on the Kansas side. So my wife and I, Diana over here, we drove. So it was a long drive. It was, yes, it was. I want to particularly thank Dr. Stone, Josh. I don't know where he's at. But he and Claudia Gay, I can't tell you how helpful they were to us in pulling this off. Really professional. I mean, if I needed anything or had a question, bang, they were right back to me. And that's very helpful to us, so we're appreciative of that. The last couple of days, we've been spending time in your community. And one of the things we've been trying to do is figure out how to pronounce your community's name. Is that a problem? And we use so Beaufort is where we came down after talking to several people that were taking money from us for one thing or another. And then there's this Beaufort group up in North Carolina, but we don't want to, boo, Chapel Hill, all of that. So anyway, hey, you got a wonderful community. We've had a great time. We were wandering over the neighborhoods, east of downtown and north. And we ran into a painter who grew up in Olathe, Kansas, which is the south side of Kansas City. We got all kinds of information from him. We had another lady that was walking, and I said, she said, where are you from? I said, Kansas City. She said, go Chiefs. And I go, well, where are you from? And she said, I'm from Pittsburgh. I go, ooh, Steelers, Iron Curtain. She's saying go Chiefs to us. So very friendly, and we thank you for coming. We are going to start now, and we're going to talk. Well, I got a couple slides here to show, and then we'll move forward with the teachers. So we are a group that began in 2008, and we're a volunteer organization. So this is not a company. We're not connected to the government in any way. What is it, 503c or whatever? Some of you that know all of that. We don't have any connection there. And our purpose is to proclaim biblical truth from a scientific perspective, but our focus is on Genesis chapters 1 through 11. We feel like the culture said that's all myth, don't believe it. Many churches already have said don't believe it, that it's actually historical narrative. And even many of the evangelical churches are saying that. So we felt like that was a target that God wanted us to work on, and so that's why we are here. We're dedicated to that. We call ourselves the Joshua Project, and later on I'll explain why it's the Joshua Project when we're talking about Genesis. But there's a reason. So anyway. Another thing that we'd like for you to know is that we have several principles that we follow. First of all, we're all volunteers, as I said. Secondly, we give away free materials. The course doesn't cost your church anything, doesn't cost you anything. And we use a lot of online media and resources. We would like for you to go to our website, genesisacademy.net, and look us up. There's more stuff there that you can enjoy. We're not going to ask for any money. No free will offering at the end. No passing the plate, however you do it here. No box out back. It's all free. We're not going to ask you for money. That's not part of what we do. And I'm excited because we have a lot of young people here tonight. And that is great because they're coming along behind. It ties into a little bit with Joshua and why we call it the Joshua Project. But I'm excited because they're our real target audience. Because we know that some of us that are more experienced are going to be passing away unless Jesus comes back. And they're going to be taking over the church. And we want them to know that the Bible can be believed and that the Bible is true. And so if we can work with them in any way as we're here, why, we would love to do that. So let's look just a little bit at our beliefs so you know where we're coming from. We believe that the Bible is the one true historical record of God's creation, the fall, the flood, the tower, and of course we believe that Jesus is the hope of the world. So we're going to be concentrating on that and actually believe that Genesis 1 through 11 is not just myth, which it's not, but it's actually a historical narrative. So keep that in mind. And finally, we'll be covering those first 11 chapters in Genesis. We're going to be talking about the first 4 days of Genesis tonight. 4 days tonight, first 4 days. Tomorrow, we will talk about days 5 and 6, and then we're going to stop. That's what God has done in 6 days. Then we're going to tell you what the world says. We're going to have a special presentation on evolution. Okay? So you can't miss that. Then we'll, in the middle of our late morning, we'll have the fall and what judgment occurred at that point in time. Then we'll talk about, in Genesis 1 through 3, how there are 2 laws that occur in science. The first and second laws of science will show you how they correlate with the first 3 chapters of Genesis, which everybody makes fun of out there in the world. And the 2 basic laws of science, most of our laws come from those 3 chapters, and we're going to try to correlate that for you. Then we'll do the flood before lunch a little bit, and then afterward, if we need to finish up on the flood, we will. And then we'll talk about, after the flood, we're going to hit something called the Ice Age. And we're going to show you how the Ice Age bridges from the fall to the tower. And then we'll do the tower, and I'll end with the hope. So from now on, even though you applauded me, which I really appreciate, I very seldom get applause. So I really appreciate that. I won't do a lot of talking, and you'll have 3 teachers that will be speaking tonight and kind of trade off depending on where their talents lie. So that's where we're headed. Okay? You ready to roll? All right. Daniel, let's talk about day 1, time, manner, and energy. Go. And Dan Aldrich. Well, you got applause too. Now, wait a minute, Dan. Now, let's briefly tell them, because we have a limited amount of time. Back where you grew up initially, what your family is currently. Go.
I was born in Kansas City, raised in Arizona. Did time in the service. Met my wife.
Yay, service.
I was on tanks in the Army. Not so popular around here, probably.
I was on a typewriter in the Army during the Vietnam deal.
I had an M60A3 and an M1A1.
There you go.
But anyway, that was kind of fun for a time. Met my wife.
Okay.
She hired me.
That's
right.
Married. She worked you have Dillard's down here?
Or Macy's.
Macy's or whatever. Yeah. She hired him.
Yeah. We got married 33 years ago. We have a son. He's 31.
Let's have a round of applause for 33 years.
That's good. She's put up with me 33 years. We have a son, 31. He's married to Sarah.
And you're waiting.
And we're now in official grandparent wait mode.
Oh, you are officially?
We're waiting
for that
to happen.
Okay.
That happens to all of us in the room that are waiting on their kids to go ahead and
What'd you do for a living?
I spent some time in chemistry in a rocket propellant facility. That was always a lot of fun. And then went into information systems and design and did that for over 30 years in a Fortune 50 company.
And I'll bet out here you might be one of the only people. You have some patents.
I have a few, yeah, but I worked with some really smart people, and they helped me do that stuff. You know where all the blessings come from, right? Every good and perfect gift is from where? Up
and how
above.
Many anybody got more than 7 patents? We'll applaud you. Anybody? Okay, way to go.
There could be
last question before you take off.
Yes, sir.
I want you to tell these people that you have been a young earth creationist from day one.
No, I was an atheist and evolutionist, president of my science club, and when I was in the military, Jesus came and got me on a rescue mission. I had a prayerful mother.
Tell them about your mother.
She was real straightforward. She said, well, son, I'm praying that you come to know Jesus because I don't want you to go to hell. So that was her very much. So any of you teenage-aged kids, whatever. That doesn't necessarily, that's probably not the best ticket to convert, kind of Jonathan Edwards, Turner Burn, probably not the best. But I was like, nope. I was like, nah, I'm good. And then, some things happened and God saved me. And so here I am.
Here you go.
I was an evolutionist.
Here we go, day one.
Yeah. So how many of you guys just absolutely love the first verse in the Bible? Come on now. Why is it so awesome? What's that? Yeah, okay. I've heard a lot of different presentations and things on this, but first thing that I noticed is there's a beginning. And we know this from science, cosmology, and other things. There had to be a beginning to this, all of this, because from the science. We also have God, and his first name given to us is masculine plural, creator God, Elohim, which means in the beginning you've got this Trinitarian God sitting here, and then he creates the heavens, and he creates the earth. The other part here I'm going to hit in just a second, but it's really kind of cool that he would use something like, I have to set up an expanse for these things to position these things into. So he's going to set up height, width, and depth, if you will. He's going to set up himself as a Trinitarian God communicated to us through his first name he gives us. He's going to give us heavens. He's got past, present, and future in the beginning. And he's got time, matter, and energy all tied up in this module as well. So it's like this, I've heard it presented as the Trinity of Trinities, but it really is. It really is. You've got an example of a bunch of Trinitarian language in the very first verse, as if we didn't understand that, hey, I'm Trinitarian, says he. There was a past, there's a present, and there's a future. And by the way, I have to sit outside of that to create that so that you have context to live your lives in. So whoever this creative agent is, he sits outside of all of this, you see. He has to sit outside of that. He has to literally create the space, the height, width, and depth for everything to sit in. And he's got to create this matter and this energy. And by the way, what three states are matter for our chemistry friends out here? That's where I started. What are there? Yeah, solids and liquids and gases. Oh, wait a minute, that's Trinitarian too, the whole thing is. But then he says something interesting. He says, the earth is formless and and void, and it's dark. There's no light, right? And this Spirit of God is going to hover over the face of these waters. By the way, water exists in what three states? And it freezes from the top down because it expands when it gets cold and freezes. If it were to freeze and come from the bottom up, what would happen to all our fish and stuff? And it'd be dead, right? It's just very unique qualities. I'll tell you a little more about that in just a second. But what we have here is a water ball. And we know it's rotating because he's going to shine light on this, and we're going to have a first day. What do we need for day or night? We need rotation and light. Where's the light coming from? There's no sun or anything. Well, did you guys know the first 16 verses and the last 26 verses, there's no sun? There isn't. Because the Lamb is the light, the Shekinah glory of God. God shines his own light on this water ball and rotates it, and thus he has a day and a night, and he has water. There's some other cool qualities about water. You wouldn't even have your cells in your body. They couldn't stay together if the thickness of the water, the viscosity, was not exactly what it is, because it creates the surface tension for these cells to exist. It's also the universal solvent. If you guys take sugar and salt and stir it up in a cup of water and pour it out in a cookie tray and set it out in the sunshine, and you wait 2 days and you come back, what's going to be in the cookie tray? Salt and sugar. It did not destroy those, you see. It's a perfect transport medium for cells. It takes those sugars that are needed in the cell, and it dissolves them, and it passes them around using the chemistry of your cells. You're going to learn a lot more about that tomorrow. But isn't that cool? I mean, he's already just starting off. I'm just going to light this thing up and teach you guys something, right? But what about light? Here's 3 really cool aspects to light. How many of you guys know what infrared heat is? Anybody have a reptile in here? Raise your hand if you have a reptile or you've had one. There's one right there. Do you have to provide a heat lamp for that? And is it a red light typically? Yes, sometimes. But it's that heat you feel from lights that you cannot see, but you can feel it. Now, this is really kind of cool to me. I haven't figured out the perfect Trinitarian illustration with it yet, but maybe you can. But I can feel heat from light even if my eyes are closed. That's the infrared heat that comes from the light energy, right? It's warmth. There's the visible spectrum, which you guys, when the sun's out, and you can see with the narrow band that you have within your eyeball, you can see all of this that we have around us, each other, everything we can see on the planet. And there are these colors in this very narrow spectrum that we have between 380 and 720 nanometers. It's a very small percentage. It's only 0.0035% of the entire spectrum. It just happens to be what we are given. And we can see colors with that because of that. And how many colors are there in the spectrum? There's 7. Wait a minute. Are you telling me light is Trinitarian in nature? Yes, it is, because there's one more aspect to it, and it's ultraviolet. So during COVID, where's Ray, my facilities guy? He was here earlier. Is he in here still? Okay. When you have germs on furniture during COVID, they came around and they sanitized this place with what? Ultraviolet light. Because at a certain level, it actually kills bacteria. Too much of it will kill you. You can't see it, but it's an amazing aspect of light. So infrared, you can feel it but not see it. There's a visible spectrum. By it, you see everything else. Like C.S. Lewis said about the sun, right? It's like Jesus. By him, you can see everything else. And then you have this ultraviolet, which is fascinating. It's also, I was at work for a communications company and did information systems for them, but you know, all of our radio frequencies and microwave and all that is in that range, but it'll kill you if you get too much of it. It's almost like, no, man, I have to put you in the cleft of the rock and hide you, because if you felt the full brunt of the energy from God, it would just fry you. So you're protected from that with something Dave's going to tell you about here in just a minute. So here we have light in all its aspects, Trinitarian again, and we have this atmosphere that blocks out this ultraviolet light that would kill you in just a narrow band in which you can see. So I hope when you read just the first few verses in your Bible, you can start thinking, wait a minute, there's just so much cool stuff hidden in here. From a science perspective, it just geeks me out, man. I love it. So tomorrow I'll be back to do, humankind and evolution and DNA and all that stuff. So I won't see you until then, but now I'm going to give this to Dave, and we're all going to take our turn. So here we go. Thank you for listening.
So I also understand, I watched TV the other day. I saw, is it University of South Carolina? Is that how you, or is it South Carolina University? Do you care? You don't care. Do you have like a women's basketball in college here? Yeah, okay. Let's hear it for that women's team that won the national championship, right? Now you notice that wasn't real heartfelt. So all of you Clemson fans, you didn't clap, did you? No, that's okay. All right. So David Penny. Is David, can we get him up on the screen or not? Are we going to do that? No, okay. All right, David. Tell me kind of where you grew up and tell me about your current family, briefly.
Okay, I grew up in Kansas.
I don't think you have your mic on.
No, there we go.
Okay.
I grew up in Kansas, and we have a name like by Penny. So we always had 5 kids. I was born with a family of 5. My wife was, and so we have 5 kids, and we have 4 sons and 1 daughter.
And you wear penny loafers all the time.
Right.
He still does. He wears penny loafers.
Not tonight, but
not tonight. Okay. Tell me about schooling for you.
I went to high school in Kansas, and then I went. Well, I'll tell a little bit or about how I ended up at MIT.
Okay,
later,
just briefly. Okay.
And did my undergraduate there, and I became a Christian while I was there, and I ended up going to Dallas Seminary for 4 years in Greek and Hebrew, and I wanted to learn more about the faith that I hadn't had.
That's good. And your teachers back then in the old days when Dallas was tough, right? Who were a couple of your teachers?
Well, let me tell you, at MIT, they about buried me the first year. These guys were all geeks and everything, and they about buried me the first year, and the same thing happened to Dallas. Go in there, and you got guys like Unger, and Pentecost, and Walford, and S. Lewis Johnson, and you just name them. They were all there as teachers, and I had never taken a Bible course. And I got up there, and I was struggling. I thought I was smart, but I didn't do too well that first year.
Okay, tell me about what you do for a living, pretty briefly.
Okay, I was a missionary for some years among the Arabs. Had to work in French and Arabic. And then we had family issues with our family business. We're in concrete business and everything. So I came back, and I took a part in dredging sand and gravel. And that was a real education. That's why I'm still in fairly good shape, pulling cables and everything.
Oh, you're in good shape. Okay, good.
I'm only half the man I used to be.
That's right. You tell you that. I'm only half the. He used to be really strong, you know. Okay, and probably is now. Okay, now can I tell these people, please, that from the time you were young, that you have been a young Earth creationist?
No. When I was educated in a fairly intelligent family, doctors and engineers, and from 5 years old, I was indoctrinated in evolution and old universe cosmology, and I can't tell you how far back that goes. I just had my 80th birthday last week, but no, I was indoctrinated that way and fascinated with science. And so even when I went to MIT after I became a believer, I was still an ardent evolutionist and everything. And even when I went to Dallas Seminary, I don't know why they let me in there. You're supposed to sign something. And I passed it though. But anyway, I'm going to cover tonight, in this section, the second day of creation. It says, "Then the Lord God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." When I was being a scientific person, when I became a Christian, that passage is mystifying. If you were going to create the universe, would you spend one day on a passage that what's the significance? What's the firmament? What's the waters? What's the difference? You divide the waters from the waters, and you put one above the one and then the one below. God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. So the evening and morning was the second day. Do you make sense of that from a scientific point of view, from the education I'd had? What's the firmament? Some people think that there's a bronze deal over the earth, that we never did the space program. You couldn't get through it. They're flat earth people, by the way, too. But I struggled with this for years. And then you read in the passage, it's very clear in Genesis, you have to read very carefully the scriptures of what it tells you, and it'll tell you lots of things. And it says the birds, in the same passage, the birds flew across the firmament, the face of the firmament. And what it turns out, well, what are the waters above? Do we have waters above? If the firmament's the atmosphere, is there anything up above that? Do you see anything up there? How do you go to the moon? Do you go through a bunch of waters up there? Doesn't make sense. God only took 6 days to create the universe from nothing. And he devotes a whole year, a whole day of that, of the 6th to this. This becomes very important. And we're going to see this as this progresses. Because that firmament, people say, well, it can't be water above there. Water's not firm. I said, oh, yeah. Jump off of a 150-foot bridge and you'll find out how firm it is. It'll kill you. Well, the atmosphere, I worked in the NASA program for a while, the Apollo project. And one thing we learned, when you come back from the moon, you come into the atmosphere. And you've got to be very careful on the angle. You know why? If you hit it too flat, it'll skip. And those guys are finished. If you cut it too deep, you'll burn it up. If you've ever been to Washington, D.C. and the Smithsonian, you can see the capsules, the reentry ones, and it's burned all off. They've got hard stuff on the front of that thing, and you can tell exactly where it entered and burn off all that stuff. In fact, it's so violent that it creates so much static that we don't even know if they've made it back in. You have no radio contact, you have nothing until that parachute goes out. And so the atmosphere is very firm, very hard when you hit it at 12,000 miles an hour. But where are the waters above? Are there waters up there? You see any waters up there? You can't shoot a spaceship through water. It won't go. This is going to become very important in the other passage of Scripture that we get to. There were waters above before the flood. We're going to find out they did a lot of things. They created a whole world before the flood. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. So what do you have? The best theory, and I hold to this, is that the waters above, what was it, about 80 degrees out here, 75 today? Okay, what's the temperature at 6 miles up? How cold? 70 to 80 below. Do you know at 70 degrees, you can spit in the air and it'll freeze before it hits the ground? It's that cold. But what's the temperature above that? It's 1,000 to 12 degrees above. Hot, hot, hot. You can pump a lot of water in that. Well, what happens to that? We have Venus, the planet next into us. It's got a canopy that's 100 times more dense than ours. And what does it do to the planet Venus? It makes the temperature uniform over the whole planet. Even though Venus doesn't turn every day. It only turns once a year. It's locked to the sun. So what happens? You can pump a huge amount of water in the upper atmosphere, but it's not there today. What would happen? Do you know what's unique about that? It'll give you several things. Do you ever wonder why the people lived to be 930 years before? Why? Do you know what water's, one of its best characteristics is? It's almost as good as lead for absorbing radiation. The radiation coming in from the sun and from outer space is eaten up. I've even seen, when I was younger, they used to have at the university a radioactive pile that would glow. But it was in a water tub. And you could walk around it and you didn't get any of the radiation. If that water wasn't there, you'd be dead in a few minutes. Or you die within a couple of days from the radiation you get in a couple minutes. Water up there, also that water won't come down, by the way. Hot water vapor rises. That's why we get storms. It goes up in the cold zone and comes down. But if it's above the cold zone, it won't come down because it only rises. So you can pump, like in Venus, its atmosphere they have 100 times more atmosphere than we do. It's the same size. But if that was water up there, it'll give you a uniform temperature, okay, and it absorbs radiation, and you'll live a long time. You know what kills us? Our genetic material gets radiated. And eventually, you don't have any DNA that will sustain you. It gets shot through. In fact, when they were building an atomic bomb, some guys, they take it apart, and then they blow these parts together, and it goes off. Well, it slipped. If you don't do it fast, and it'll do a meltdown. And one guy got in there, and the parts came together and started to melt down. He pulled it apart, and he was dead 3 days later. But it protects you from the radiation. It'll also, like Venus, give you a uniform temperature. So the people lived, 930 years average. Okay? Because of this shield around, the water shield. It's in vapor form. It's not liquid. The clouds are liquid. Actually, they're not vapors. You know, high humidity is vapor. But clouds are little droplets. So this is all vaporized at 1,000 degrees. There would be no more rain if you have a uniform temperature over the earth. Like Venus. Its temperatures at its equator are the same as its poles, even though it doesn't rotate. It breaks up the radiation, so it's uniform. If you have a uniform temperature over the whole earth, you won't have any rain. And you won't have a rainbow. It didn't come until after the flood. Do you see how all these pieces are starting to fit together? There are going to be some very other interesting things you're going to learn with the flood, and then after the flood, there are a consequence of this vapor shield. What you have, like we said, and you'll have mild temperatures. Why? Because the absorption band of water is much higher than CO2, or they keep talking about this global warming. It's nonsense, but I don't have time to get into it. But what it is it gives you mild temperatures because why? Every drop or every molecule up in the atmosphere absorbs radiation, and it spreads it evenly down to the earth, but it also reflects a lot of it out. So the temperatures will be uniform over the whole earth, just like Venus, but it's a much milder thing. Your radiation protection, you'll have high pressures, too. Like I said, what's the pressure on Venus? Here it's, we would say 1 bar, 14.7 pounds of pressure. Okay, that's 1 bar. On Venus, it's 95 bars. Because why? It's got much more gases in its atmosphere and it loads it up. When you go to the top of Pikes Peak, what happens to you? You run out of air. It gets thinner. If you go down to the Dead Sea, you get more. You can run further. Well, what happens is you'll have, with a denser atmosphere, several things. It's hyperbolic. We don't know why, but people heal better in higher pressures. They'll create for surgery and recovery rooms that they'll put you in to increase the pressure, and you'll heal faster. Also, if you increase the pressure, the biggest animal we can have with our present atmospheric pressures are 6-ton elephants, okay? That's why Hannibal lost a lot of elephants trying to go over the mountains. They ran out of air, okay? But if you have that, what's going to happen? You can have 100-ton land animals walking around. We have fossils of them when we can only have a 6-ton today. You can bring a 30-ton whale out on the shore. Will it survive? It can breathe the air? No. It'll die of asphyxiation because the atmospheric pressure is not enough. So, and pterodactyls, 25, 30-foot wings. Can they fly today? No. We have fossils of 3-foot wingspan dragonflies. Pterodactyls 25 to 30 foot long. You know why it can't fly? There's not enough air pressure. You don't get enough air going over the wings to get lift, and you don't have enough air for it to pump its wings. That's why you run out of oxygen on top of Pikes Peak. There's not enough air pressure. So what happens is this thing that God has done, He's foreseeing a lot of things. And He created a beautiful world just by having what? A canopy. A waters above. To make you animals live big, and they also will live longer. You know, some animals don't, they just get bigger and bigger. Gators. Down here, we chop some swamps out here down in Florida, and the gators get bigger and bigger the longer they live. Trees get bigger and bigger. Look out here at your live oaks. If they had more atmosphere, they'd live a long time. So what you have is these are the benefits of having this. And to tell you about the uniform temperatures, I don't know if you know it, but that in Antarctica, well, under the North Pole, under the ice, there are fossil remains of corals that grew in 74-degree temperatures. Under that meant that the temperature of the Arctic Ocean at one time was 74 degrees. Ross Sea in Antarctica, fossils the same, growing at 70-degree temperatures. Why would that be? It's because of this canopy. It spreads the temperatures all. Your biggest coal beds in the world are probably found in Antarctica, made out of what? Tropical plants. You can't even grow a tree in Antarctica. What are you doing with fossil beds and coal beds made out of tropical plants? Uniform temperatures. All these things. So the world before the flood had this thing, doesn't have today. You'd have a perfect environment to live in. Why do you think Adam and Eve can walk around without any clothes on? Because it's uniform. Pleasant. God knows how to create in this universe that's out there very hostile to you. Live in this zone of perfect conditions without sin. Go on to the next day is day 3. We're ready for...
All right, day 3, we're going to talk about earth, seas, and plants.
Yes,
and
sir.
to do that, we have Dr. Ward Brown here that's going to help us out. So, Ward, we need to know about where you grew up and your family a little bit currently.
I grew up on a farm in western Kansas, and currently married to a very, very lovely bride. She's right there.
Yeah, Sarah. Come on, wave, Sarah. They want to applaud you.
Yeah.
And Dave is married also with 5 children. And behind him is Carmen back there. Carmen, yeah, well, let's hear from him. And I did mention my wife, Diana, of 54 years. Yeah. Okay, Ward, back to Ward. You were a farm boy, right?
I was a farm boy, and we have, so went to school to become my chosen profession as a 3rd grader, and so decided to become a veterinarian at that time.
Okay, wait a minute, Ward.
Yeah.
How many of you knew what you were going to be in 3rd grade? Anybody out there? I certainly. Oh, you did? Yeah. What were you going to be? A nurse.
Very good.
Right. Okay. There you go. Somebody right after you. Go ahead. Now.
A goal setter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Very good.
So we know where you're from. Western, little town, right?
A small town. Yes.
Did you go to a 1-room schoolhouse?
I did for a couple of years.
Oh, right.
Yes.
How many 1-room schoolhouse people do we have?
Yeah.
Whoa, here's one.
Yeah.
He was brave. There's one back there.
Yes.
Okay, there's one there.
There's another one.
3 of us.
Good.
I was in a 1-room school.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just doing the talking and don't know anything. So anyway, okay. What you did for a living obviously was?
Well, I did pursue my goal of becoming a veterinarian. So.
There, way to go. And you went to
yeah.
K-State, Kansas State, right?
Kansas State University,
Yeah,
yes.
so, okay, let's hear it for Kansas State, because
Yeah.
they need a little recognition. KU people, or, Snob Hill is always after them. Silo Tech, we call them. So anyway. So, as a veterinarian, you had, 2 clinics that you ran in Kansas City?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Ward, what was, the strangest animal that you worked on as a vet?
I'd probably have to say a wallaby.
A wallaby.
A wallaby.
Okay,
Yes.
so a wallaby is like a small kangaroo?
Like a small kangaroo, yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So, what did you do on a small kangaroo?
well, it was an intact male, and the procedure is that we like to affectionately call picking his pockets.
I think we'll not go any further with that. All right, Ward Brown, can you, I'm 0 for 2.
Okay.
I'm 0 for 2 on this question.
Yeah.
Okay, now just tell them that you have been a young earth creationist since 3rd grade, okay?
Yeah.
So tell them the truth now. I'm 0 for 2.
Boy, I wish I could say that I was a creationist all those years, but pursuing to become a veterinarian from 3rd grade on and being deeply indoctrinated by the science that I was taught, no, I was definitely an old earther, a primordial pond scummer type of a person. So yeah, that came later on in life when that outlook changed. So, but great to see all of you here tonight. Thank you for coming to listen to what we love to talk about. And when we hang around together and have meals and things of that effect, we talk about this. So we are, we're great that someone comes and visits as well. So if you ever want to have a great time here at this church, I found where it is. You hang out at the front door with Chuck. And yeah, you get to know all the people, you get to know everything about them and things like that as well. So great to see you all at the front door as well. So, hey, let's move on to day 3. And first of all, we'll start off with doing what probably the most accurate and the most truthful thing that we do is that we read God's Word. And we go to our reference manual here, our reference text, and about about on day 3, it says, "Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good." With this, we have a picture here. Just pay a little bit of attention to the picture, and what that is to represent the green area on that globe is the land. One landmass, a supercontinent at that time during the 3rd day of creation, and then the rest of it would be covered with water. The previous slides that Dave and then also Dan had the a water-covered globe, showing up there. Now we have land. We don't know exactly how that occurred, but most of the creation scientists proposed the mechanism is that there was an uplifting of the land, and then the waters ran off the land, leaving it dry. Did you catch that? And let the dry land appear. Leaving it dry, the waters ran off, uplifting the land, and then the waters collected into one place. God called them the seas. So at this time, it is estimated that the percentage of land versus the ocean was 50-50. Today, land or earth, as God called it, the land portion represents about 30%, and the water portion represents about 70%. So we'll talk about that in the flood to explain where the percentages of the land and the water, how that become different. And also, we're going to be talking about how the supercontinent breaks up as well. We'll talk about that during the flood. So the next thing with this day 3 that we have that occurs, then God said, let. Don't you love that? He didn't say, oh, we'll show up and see what happens today. We'll just let the day happen. God said, let. Means that God had intentional plans. So it was as if we'll let things start to take place. And that he said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself. And it's on the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. In there's a lot. And that's what we would like to be able to try to explain to you and point out so that you have a better understanding and explanation of the creation process. This is a intentional, purposeful designer at work. So design with purpose. It's not chaotic. It's not spontaneous. It's not something of which just happens by chance. This is something that's being directed. And in this, we see that there's some concepts within that those verses in which divinely directed, and their principles in which we see here and are carried on, and then they keep building upon as well. Let the earth bring forth grass, and the herb that yields seed, and the fruit trees that yield fruit according to its kind. The word kind is highlighted there several times. If God keeps repeating a certain word, it must be important. Now, the word kind we'll be learning about further, and it'll be something which we hope that you will have a very good grasp of that idea, because it will become important when we come to the flood, and the explanation of the animals that go on the flood, how it's going to be, how all the animals we see today in the world could have been contained on the flood. Now, we'll explain that a little further later on. But in this particular passage here, the things in which are brought out is that let the earth bring forth grass and herbs and that yield the seed. Bring forth means there's going to be vegetative life. So it brings forth the divine principle of life. Plant life is being talked about here. Vegetative life. Now, if you did a study on biblical ideas of life, then there's going to be several different types of lives in which talked about in the Bible. So vegetative life is going to be different than animal life. It's going to be different than human life. But we'll get into that just a little bit more as we're putting things together and putting the dots together for you. Not only life, but then there is going to be the idea of reproduction. Divinely direct reproduction is taking place here as well. Through the fruit, through the seeds, and then also according to its kind. That is talking about genetics. This means that two of a kind are then going to be able to reproduce and to produce offspring, seed, going to be able to do that. And the kind and animals, we're going to be talking about that more too, but just know that it takes two of a kind to make a certain production of an offspring. So that is important with this. And then the thing here with the kind is that the genetics and it's a genetic code that is directing that kind. Genetic code means information. In this verse already we have life, reproduction, genetics, information. And that is something which we wish we had a whole lot more time, because we have a whole lot of information we could dump on you all about this because we love it. But, and as Dan would say, we geek out about it. But we will be talking about these things as well. Now, with the plants, what do plants need as we know them today? Plants are going to be needing light to do photosynthesis. And as was mentioned earlier, there is no sun at this point in time. Dave will talk about that here on day 4. But there's no sun yet. So the light, Dan mentioned source of light, Shekinah glory, would probably be going on at this point in time. And the idea of light for photosynthesis, man, what a complex process. Any of those of you who've studied that in biology or anything to that effect, that is a process that is so complicated that you think that would happen by random chance? By just random mutations? It is in the plants that we have, the chlorophyll. And then you have the photosynthesis process, which then is producing food, oxygen, and doing those type of things. The plants are using the CO2. So that is taking place. Design with purpose to make complexity. So you have all of those type of things going on already in day 3. So the other things you're going to need is for plants is not only we only talked about the light, but it's also going to need to have water, nutrition, and then the symbiotic relationships that plant has for you gardeners. You know that plants are going to be needing the small microbes. It's going to be bacteria, yeast, and then also pollinators. Now, probably the pollinators, the insects, and the creatures that do the pollination, probably at that point in time, they were not created yet. And we're probably thinking that that's going to be probably day 5 when the pollinators come along. Day 5, day 6. The microbes, maybe there might have been some of the small microbes, the bacteria, the yeast, came along here day 3. But there's probably more that come along that are symbiotic with the other living creatures on day 5 and day 6. We don't know for sure, but it's things to think about. So with plants need those things. There's a lot in here in which we, just first reading it, you don't think there's very much going on. It says, there's land came about, and then there's plants. So that's all we think. There is a video I'd like to share with you, and this video will be showing the more detailed and intricate, amazing things with a seed. Have you guys ever heard of the plant called dandelion? How many of you love dandelions? Oh, there's a few of you love dandelions. How many of you fight and try to kill dandelions? More dandelion haters than lovers. Okay. Let's see what you think after you watch this.
Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
You're watching the launch of 1,000 flying machines, each exquisitely crafted to airdrop life throughout the earth. A dandelion puff exists for one crucial purpose: to disperse the flower seeds as far as possible from the parent plant. Its component parts are well suited for the task. Dozens of individual seeds are attached to the head of this flower. Each is covered with microscopic hooks that will eventually help anchor them to fertile soil. A thin stem elevates a cluster of bristles called the pappus, and these filaments are engineered to respond to variations in the weather. On a rainy morning, the moist, heavy air makes extended flight all but impossible. Every pappus reacts by closing tightly. But later in the day, when the air dries out and the temperature warms, the reaction is quickly reversed in preparation for takeoff. Under optimal conditions, a seed can stay aloft for more than 10 miles. At the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, a team of engineers discovered how these tiny mechanisms fly so well. Using a vertical wind tunnel, they photographed the dynamics of airflow around the seed. When currents passed between the bristles, a swirling whirlpool called a vortex ring formed just above the pappus. In nature, this pocket of low pressure sucks the parachute upward and stabilizes its movement as it's carried by the wind. Other studies have also revealed that the vortex's shape and ability to maintain its position are determined by the size and quantity of the bristles and the amount of empty space between them. Simulation models demonstrate that in a biological structure this small, the finely tuned airflow required for flight is the product of circular geometry with 92% open space and 100 thread-like filaments. Not surprisingly, that's the blueprint for the pappus of a typical dandelion seed. How well does this technology work? When compared to a conventional parachute, the pappus is at least 4 times more efficient at maintaining altitude and slowing the seed's descent to Earth. Innovation, foresight, and world-class engineering, all displayed in living wonders so common and familiar, we pass them by each day without a glance or second thought.
Okay, how many of you dandelion haters now have changed your mind? So that's just one of many examples of seeds and some of the amazing ways in which they are made, and they are going to be reproducing and propagating. So the other things at this point in time to mention on day 3 here, as I'm closing it out, is that at this juncture there is probably on the Earth that we had we have a magnetosphere, which is basically the electromagnetic field that's around the Earth to help that's developed because of a magneto that's in the center of the Earth and the iron and charged particles that's in there. So a magnetosphere or electromagnetic field that acts as a protection around the Earth as well is going on at this point in time. And then the other thing is that we have the initiation of an ecosystem going on. And then that becomes more and more complex and developed as we get more animals and that involved here on day 5 and day 6. So those are all the things that's going on with day 3, and now we're ready for day 4.
Before we come to day 4, yeah. I want you to know that when we first started doing this about 8 or 10 years ago, we have, for your information, this is about the 37th conference or course. We have a 6-week course that we do that goes into more depth than what we're getting here over the weekend. But we've taken over 3,000 people through the course. When we first started, we maybe put the verses up, but we didn't read them. But Dan said, we need to read the verses to the folks. And the reason we need to read the verses to the folks, take the time. We didn't used to take the time, but we're taking the time to read God's Word because we know that the Scriptures say what? That His Word will not return void. Okay, and that's why we're doing this, because we believe that that's impacting all of you in some way, we don't know what, and probably varied in many ways. So that's why we're doing that. Now, Dave is going to come up again and do day 4, and then we're going to have a little preview for tomorrow of about 3 minutes, and then we're going to close, and we'll be out of here at least on time, or maybe a little before. Yeah, you don't have to applaud for that, but that's okay. So Dave, you want to come up and tell them about the cosmos? Man, be ready for this. Be ready for this. All right? Go get them, Dave.
Yeah, right. Up to this point, it's interesting, as was pointed out at the beginning with Dan, that there is no sun or moon or stars. All of this is, the earth is being created before all of these things. We're up to the point where you have land, you've got the seas, and you've got plants. There are no animals or humans in the thing yet. So, does this fit into the Big Bang Theory? No. None of it fits into that. And we can go into it later. What we're going to do, by the way, is we're going to try and make ourselves available as much, the speakers here, after the sessions and between sessions, that you can ask us questions. We'll stay here as late as you want to, and we'll deal with other questions. We can't deal with most of the stuff because we're moving too fast here. And we know you're intelligent people. You have questions, just like I did when I was young, and you need answers for them. So what you've got now at this point is you have no sun, moon, and stars. What's interesting, did you ever notice that in the eternal state, the New Jerusalem, there's no sun or moon or anything? Who's the light of the thing? The Lord Himself and the Lamb. So what we're going to do, and He's going to talk about some of this in the creation at the end, the hope, because it's real pretty now, but it's going to get really ugly as we go through this Genesis account. But at this point, God is taking in 6 days, 6 24-hour days. Some people say, oh, I think they're ages. He said, well, how long was the night then? If the days were ages. What happened the night? Did everything die? You know, it's not logical. But if you read the text very carefully, you'll understand. Like we said, no rain. It says it's no rain. It was water bar and a t-shirt effect. What you have here is it says, this is in the universes as a whole. It says, then the Lord God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. Then God made the two great lights, the greater day, the light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. Then it says, and He made the stars also. You know what this is overwhelming. If you know anything about the universe, and He made the stars. We live around one star. Our sun is one star in a galaxy, the Milky Way, of 20 billion stars. You know, well, we'll get into that. How many how many galaxies are out there? It's stunning. And goes on to say, he made the stars also. God set them in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth and to rule over the day and over the night and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. So it was an evening and a morning, the fourth day. I don't know if you know it, but if you don't have days and nights and everything, all of our measurements are made out of created things. Our seasons, our days, well, our feet for distance. And in French, it's a pouce. It's an inch. It's your thumb. All these things God made so you know what time's passing, what's taking place, and how you order your lives, and how you sleep. You know what it would be if you didn't sleep and there weren't nights? You'd go stark raving mad after a week. You'd be crazy. But God set these things. And even the weeks that we have. Did it ever occur to you? Why do we have 7-day weeks? Chinese tried to get away from it, the communists. And what happens? Is you produce less in 7 days than you do in 6. In my business, I tried it for a while. I know that. You get a walk and you're walking around. You've got to have these that God's created for your good so that you can live and rest. And if you don't get sleep, you're finished. This is Isaiah 40. It's also in Psalm 147 where he explains, lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars. The one who leads forth the host by number, he knows the number of them, and he calls them by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing. Now, how many is that? They think that there's probably, from the new telescope, the James Webb, that we can see deeper than the Hubble because it's set out beyond the Earth in what they call Lagrange points. There's certain places that if you put things in there, they're stable orbits. And they put it out, the Hubble goes around the Earth, the Webb they put out there, and it's out about 930,000 miles beyond the Earth. It's somewhat out, it's sheltered, and it can be cooler, but it can looks deep into space. They think that there's 10 trillion galaxies, okay? Each with 100 billion stars in each galaxy. You know what numbers you're talking about? And we live around one star. We think we're big. We're 7 billion people, 8 billion people on the Earth. Do you know what? If there's 7 billion people just in our galaxy of 200 billion stars, that's 30 stars for every man, woman, and child on the Earth. That's just one galaxy. Let me give you some numbers. That's the number of stars in 10 trillion galaxies, each with 100 billion stars. That's 10. That's one with 24 zeros behind it. Who are we dealing with here? Who are we dealing with? And he does these. Is he going to be tired at the end of the 6 days? Worn out? All of you are like me. We do 1 day's work and we're collapsed. And we haven't done anything. How much can you shovel in 1 day? Maybe 4 or 5 tons of dirt? And you don't do anything. He's making these things by his spoken word. He's the same that came and walked the face of the earth. According to, there was nothing made of Jesus, it says, but that he didn't make. The one that walked the earth and is our Redeemer. Think of this. 1 day, 1 24-hour day, 10 to the 24th stars, and he knows not only the number, he knows the name of every one of them. It's unbelievable who we're dealing with. I want you to, this guy puts it to, I don't know if you know this guy, but Metaxas. He's an interesting guy. But listen to what he says about it.
The same year Time featured its now famous headline, the astronomer Carl Sagan announced that there were 2 necessary criteria for a planet to support life: the right kind of star and a planet the right distance from that star. Given the roughly octillion planets in the universe, that's 1 followed by 24 zeros, there should have been about septillion planets, that's 1 followed by 21 zeros, capable of supporting life. With such spectacular odds, scientists were optimistic that the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, known by its initials SETI, an ambitious project launched in the 1960s, was sure to turn up something soon. With a vast radio telescopic network, scientists listened for signals that resembled coded intelligence. But as the years passed, the silence from the universe was deafening. As of 2014, researchers have discovered precisely bupkis, nada, zilch, which is to say 0 followed by an infinite number. What happened? As our knowledge of the universe increased, it became clear that there were, in fact, far more factors necessary for life, let alone intelligent life, than Sagan supposed. His 2 parameters grew to 10, then 20, and then 50, which meant that the number of potentially life-supporting planets decreased accordingly. The number dropped to a few thousand planets and kept on plummeting. Even SETI proponents acknowledged the problem. Peter Schenkel wrote in a 2006 piece for Skeptical Inquirer, a magazine that strongly affirms atheism, "In light of new findings and insights, we should quietly admit that the early estimates may no longer be tenable." Today, there are more than 200 known parameters necessary for a planet to support life, every single one of which must be perfectly met or the whole thing falls apart. For example, without a massive gravity-rich planet like Jupiter nearby to draw away asteroids, Earth would be more like an interstellar dartboard than the verdant orb that it is. Simply put, the odds against life in the universe are astonishing. Yet, here we are, not only existing, but talking about existing. What can account for it? Can every one of those many parameters have been perfectly met by accident? At what point is it fair to admit that it is science itself that suggests that we cannot be the result of random forces? Doesn't assuming that an intelligence created these perfect conditions in fact require far less faith than believing that a life-sustaining Earth just happened to beat the inconceivable odds? But wait, there's more. The fine-tuning necessary for life to exist on a planet is nothing compared with the fine-tuning required for the universe to exist at all. For example, astrophysicists now know that the values of the 4 fundamental forces, gravity, the electromagnetic force, and the strong and weak nuclear forces, were determined less than 1/1,000,000th of a second after the Big Bang. Alter any one of these 4 values ever so slightly, and the universe as we know it could not exist. For instance, if the ratio between the strong nuclear force and the electromagnetic force had been off by the tiniest fraction of the tiniest inconceivable fraction, then no stars could have formed at all. Multiply that single parameter by all the other necessary conditions, and the odds against the universe existing are so heart-stoppingly astronomical that the notion that it all just happened defies common sense. It would be like tossing a coin and having it come up heads 10 quintillion times in a row. I don't think so. Fred Hoyle, the astronomer who coined the term Big Bang, said that his atheism was greatly shaken by these developments. One of the world's most renowned theoretical physicists, Paul Davies, has said that the appearance of design is overwhelming. Even the late Christopher Hitchens, one of atheism's most aggressive proponents, conceded that without question the fine-tuning argument was the most powerful argument of the other side. Oxford University professor of mathematics, Dr. John Lennox, has said, "The more we get to know about our universe, the more the hypothesis that there is a creator gains in credibility as the best explanation of why we are here." The greatest miracle of all time is the universe. It is the miracle of all miracles, one that inescapably points to something or someone beyond itself.
In his 28 trillion number. Hope you can see now in these first 4 days, I'm a non-science person, so I'm like probably most of you out there. You see how God's put this all together? He laid it out there. We got everything that we need. And now, tomorrow morning, we're going to talk about days 5 and 6, the sea creatures and the birds. And then we're going to talk about the land animals. And then we're going to talk about humans. We're the most complex thing that there is in the universe. Hey, puff up your chest a little. Isn't that great? That's pretty great. So we want you to come back. We want you to join us in the morning and tomorrow. We know it's very alluring here to want to be out there. But in here, you're going to learn some more things, and as we go through this, you'll see how this all fits together. It's really exciting of what God is. Obviously, He's a perfect planner, but it's really exciting. Now, we're going to close, but before we do, we're going to just give you just a little taste of tomorrow. So let's watch this. It's about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Where you at? Where you at? Yeah, okay, here we go. Click again, Dan. One more time. Sorry. None. Spirit for the Lord. Now to close us down is the pastor.
All right, that's the introduction. Tomorrow you don't want to miss it. So 8 o'clock, the doors are open. There'll be some coffee and the like. 9 o'clock, we'll start. Okay, Father, thank you. The heavens are declaring the glory of the Lord. Your divine attributes, your eternal power and nature are clearly seen through what you've made. Help us to understand it more fully. Give us a good night's rest, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
The teachers will be up here if you've got questions or want to make a comment. They'll be up front here.
Super.
As long as you want us to ask questions, we'll stay. Because we don't have anywhere else to go.